Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. On the agenda tonight, we have Jack White, and this is going to be coming from the end of last year, 2018, and he's going to be playing through Over and Over, and I'm also going to fast forward it to one of his most well-known tracks as well. And a little bit of information, the crowd at this event were actually thinking they were going to see Sam Smith, but he had to cancel at the last minute, so they got Jack White instead. So a little bit of a build change there, but let's get Jack up on screen and see how he gets on. Okay, I'm just going to jump in here because we've had a good taster of the track so far. And first of all, I always say that playing and singing at the same time doubles the difficulty. But with Jack, he's always playing riffs. He's not just thrashing out chords here, so the difficulty really does ramp up when you are constantly throwing in riffs and supplying a vocal at the same time. And the interesting thing about Jack is the way that he sets up his guitar in terms of his tone, because he's always got that fuzz on there, and it's always bathed in overdrive as well, which means that it's overdriven and it's almost bordering on a nasty tone. It's got that element to it, which of course is totally intentional because of the vocal that Jack puts across, especially in this track, which is an aggressive vocal. So you need to have an aggressive sound underneath that to then complement each other. So that combination really works well. And if Jack just had a clean tone and then had that aggressive vocal over the top, obviously it would just sound really dodgy because Jack isn't being really strict with his vocal. He's not hitting notes. He's not being really pitch perfect. He's making sure that that vocal over the top is the feeling of the track, is the attitude of the track, and the guitar tone has got to match the attitude of the vocal that's coming out as well. Another thing you'll notice, if you're looking out for it, that I've mentioned before about a lot of top bands, is that live, they'll bring out that organ or just the keys. They'll bring out that element of the sound, even if it isn't on the original track. And all the great rock bands, or at least very popular rock bands went to that live. They had that organ sound that just absolutely fills in so much frequency, and Jack's gone for that here. I have seen Jack perform in a 3-piece setup, so it's just literally him playing his guitar with those riffs, a bassist and the drummer. And I think to begin with, it was just Jack and his wife on drums. And that's another interesting thing, is that Jack said that it was his sister on drums, where actually it was his wife. I think they were only together for 4 years. They broke up in 2000. And the reason that Jack did that is that he said that when it's a brother and a sister who are playing in the same band, people see that as interesting. And that is true. Whereas when there is a husband and wife, people are more interested in the relationship between those two sometimes than the music. And I totally understand that, because as a musician, you want your music to be the focus, not the fact that you're in a relationship with the other person who's in the band. Another thing you would have noticed are the backing singers as well, because it means that Jack can do that call and response, and they're just giving that tagline of the track over and over. And it's always going to add another element, another depth to a live performance when you've got that lead vocal just backed up with really strong backing vocalists as well. And all the same rules apply. You'll see bands and artists that all share the same things in common, especially live. Like when we're looking at Jack White here, of course, he's won 12 Grammys, and every one of his solo albums has gone to #1 on the Billboard charts. So we're talking about somebody who absolutely knows what he's doing from a writing perspective, but also from a performing perspective. And when you put together a track and then take it out on tour, like I said, the rules are the same. So it means that you've got to have dynamics in there. Jack is great at changing up the dynamics, sometimes just going to his vocal with the drums, sometimes even just a foot pedal, and he has that megaphone sound on his voice. Just really changes it up compared to when he was playing and singing and just playing riff-based stuff. Then just going to the drums and the vocal is a great change up. And when you've come from the performance background that Jack has when he first started, of just having a guitar and drums, you've got to do so much to make that interesting for 3 or 4 minutes, because some bands have 4 or 5 or 6 instruments going the whole time to keep it interesting. And just quickly back to the performance, have a listen to how tight the drums, bass and Jack's lead guitar riffs are. They're absolutely spot on, and they have to be, because there are so few instruments here. If it wasn't tight, you would just see it a mile off. It would stick out like a sore thumb. Let's jump back into it. I'm just going to jump in here to have a word about that solo, because with Jack's playing and his lead playing especially, he has that wild feel to his lead breaks, which absolutely fits in, of course, with the tone that he's got. It's kind of like a wild tone that he goes for. But the attitude of the solo is the thing that he's putting across. And he's never going to be one of those guys that's going to sit down and give you perfect arpeggios with sweet picking. You know, he's just into the sound. He pretty much just throws everything into his lead work. And it was interesting there, we had that octave pedal effect, which meant that Jack was just playing the standard notes that you normally would do, minor pentatonics here, but then also using that octave pedal he actually does quite a quick open and close of that. So it means that he's pushing it up an octave. So when he strikes the string, initially you're going to hear where the note is, and then you're going to hear instantly the octave above, because he's rocking that octave pedal forwards and backwards quite quickly. So it gives a really cool effect. Just cued it forward so we can have a little listen to another track that I think a lot of people will recognize, especially the riff. This is Seventh Nation Army. I'm just going to jump in here because, again, listen to that tone. This has got even more of a hint of nasty about it, but it's all for the attitude of the track. And that's something that Jack does so well, is that everything in the track fits in with the expression or the attitude that's actually written into it. But this track is a perfect example of melody being king, because the riff is so basic, and it's a riff that even if you don't play guitar, you can play it. Like, I was on a radio show once and the presenter asked me to teach him a guitar line that he could play just while we were listening to a song. So we weren't on air at the time. So I just showed him this riff. And it means that by the time he came back to go live, he could now play the guitar. He didn't play guitar, but he could play this riff. And that, for me, just absolutely signifies and emphasizes how simple this riff is, but because of the melody, it is a massive, massive hit. It's being played all over the place. All the sports grounds, like when you score a goal in football, this comes on, and you'll just hear it absolutely everywhere. The beauty about all of the great riffs and all of the great songs is they have something that just sticks in your head. Of course, if Jack played this and he had maybe 10 or 20 more notes in it, you wouldn't be able to repeat it back. So it would not stick in your brain because you can't sing that quickly. So this track absolutely resonates and can connect with so many people because it's so simple. Anyone can sing it back. Even a crowd at a football game who don't have any musical ability can pretty much get close to what this riff is. Another thing I want to mention about this track is that for this live performance, Jack's got that slide on his little finger, which means that he's obviously got it there for that slide solo, but also leaving the first, second and third finger free on that left hand. There are some players that you'll see who have the slide on that third finger, and actually all manner of fingers I've seen people using slides, but having it on that little finger for me is the most advantageous position to have it in, because it leaves you open for all those lines you might want to play, those pentatonic lines with the first and the third finger, leaves you open to semitones as well if you want to throw in that second finger. So a lot of the top blues players you'll see playing slide with their little finger and actually combining it with hammer-ons, pull-offs, and just pentatonic and blues scale with the first, second and third finger in amongst the slides. Just a quick word about Jack, because he keeps himself to himself, which you absolutely can't blame him for with the current trend of paparazzi and everyone trying to get in your life at every available opportunity. But the amount of work and support that he's given to institutes in his hometown of Detroit. For example, in 2009, he paid for the renovation of a baseball diamond, and that was in southwest Detroit in Clark Park, and that was almost $170,000. And the Detroit Masonic Temple was going to be closed down in 2013 because they owed $142,000 in back taxes, but Jack got involved and he paid the whole bill for that. So when you do go there now, their second largest theatre there is called the Jack White Theatre. Also, the National Recording Preservation Foundation received a donation from Jack. There's a lot of rhyming going on there, but he gave them $200,000 to just help them to continue what they do in terms of preserving old recordings. Because, of course, back in the day, reel-to-reel tape was used, and that will degenerate over time. So there are a lot of sides to Jack that I think a lot of people don't know about, but in terms of his songwriting and his live performance, he's just very much got that attitude and that feel. Everything is really on the same page in terms of those vocals and the way that he plays lead, and the way that he arranges his tracks. But thank you so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!